and welcome to Surroundscapes, a video podcast series that is put out by Bluesound Professional, covering various aspects of the AV industry, hopefully probing into some interesting areas. This episode is one of our case study episodes, and for this, I'm going to be talking to Marcus Rose, the founder of Valeo Technology in Australia. So welcome, Marcus.
Thank you, Graham. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, likewise. It's good to see you.
Yeah.
So to start things off, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you even got into the industry?
Yes, so I was born in Canada, and you probably can't pick that from my accent, but I grew up in Wales. And like many of your guests on this show, I can't really claim that I've got any musical background talent. I'd love to say I played guitars and drums, but sadly, there's no such luck there. That said, music was definitely a big part of my life growing up, and it is so now. My father, he had a very vast vinyl collection, and that was everything from sort of the Beatles, Elton John, Lionel Richie. My mum loved sort of Cliff Richard, and I can't remember how many Enya albums I bought her over the years. And then I had two older siblings as well. My brother, he was about 5-6 years older than me, so he was quite into the early rap scene as we were growing up. And then my sister was absolutely obsessed with Wham and Billy Joel. So my house was sort of like this rotating orchestra of different sound genres, if you like. And I got into music very early as well. I started buying vinyl. I still buy vinyl today. My first one, you'd probably be interested, was a Stand and Deliver by Adamant. You can probably remember that, I'm sure.
I can. Yep.
And that was quickly followed by Pass the Dutchie by Musical Youth. I don't know whether you remember. I've still actually got them on 7-inch vinyl out in the lounge. And look, outside of music, I always loved the outdoors. I was normally outside somewhere with my football boots on, or soccer as it is known here in Australia. And I was outside exploring somewhere or playing soccer. And every summer, my parents actually had a caravan down in West Wales, and the place called Poppet Sands near Cardigan. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with the countryside out there. Mm-hmm. And we used to be out down there 6 weeks, and I absolutely loved it. All day was sort of spent down the beach, or I was out looking for crabs, or I was fishing with my brother. And I think that deep connection with nature, that sort of really stayed with me as I've got older. And back then I studied business in Glamorgan University. I didn't, like a lot of my friends, go away. I stayed close to home. And like many at the UK at the time, I got absolutely sucked into Australian soap operas. And there was two in particular. There was Home and Away. And then there was another show called Neighbours. And this was sort of pre-pop Kylie Minogue era. She was playing Charlene. Again, you probably remember this. Mm-hmm. And I remember watching it, and I absolutely fell in love with the sort of lifestyle, that, you know, seeing the kids come home from school, they'd go down to the beach. And I thought, this is amazing. I had this real fascination. That's sort of where the fascination with Australia started. And I moved out here. I came out here as a backpacker in 1998. And I stayed here till 2002. I pretty much did the whole thing, backpacker thing, went around Australia. I was sponsored by a company out here. I stayed out for the Olympics. And then I remember I came back, and my dad sat me down and he said, "Look, Marcus, you've had a great time parading around the world. What are you going to do with this business degree?" And he was a successful businessman. He had a roofing business for many years, but he didn't really want me or my brother to get into that. So I made a decision. I said, right, I'm going to go to move to London. My sister was there, and I got into sales up in London, and it was probably one of the the worst industries to get into. It had a pretty bad reputation. It was photocopiers at that time of year. Mm-hmm. And it was brutal. I remember my sales manager at the time, he was very old school. And for the first 3 months, he wouldn't let me back in the office until I'd gone out door knocking. I'd have to get 30 cards signed and stamped from receptionists around my patch. And it really taught me a lot. It taught me a lot how to, well, initially talk to people, how to read people, how to adapt your style, how to earn trust. And it was really hard. It was sink or swim. But I think that early experience sort of really shaped everything for me from a sales perspective of what came forward. And then I was in that industry for probably about 4 or 5 years. And then I moved into telecoms, and I started with a company called Plantronics. in London, and that was about 2006. And it started working with them, and then I had my first child 2007. And I remember thinking, look, London's been great. It's a great place to have fun and work. But then Australia is where I want to bring up my kids. So we moved back here 2008, and I was fortunate enough to have a transfer with Plantronics at the time. They initially put me with one of their distributors here, it was Annexter, and then they took me on full time. And it was then, best part of 12 years that I was with them. And it was towards the end of that era I fell into a role which was heading up sales across ANZ, and this is for a new incubation product that they had started, and it was called Habitat Soundscaping. And that role completely changed the direction of my career, and it's pretty much why I'm here speaking to you today about Mood, Sonic, and Valeo.
Excellent. That's great context. You mentioned Enya, and it kind of reminds me of I was actually telling a friend a story a couple of days ago. I used to play in a folk rock band in England, and
Okay.
we'd do festivals in the summer. And
Yep.
there was a band called Clannad who would also do the same festivals.
Yep.
And either we'd be headlining or they'd be headlining. And Clannad's lead singer was a woman called Marie.
Yep.
But it was a sort of family band. They were all members of the same extended family in Ireland. And Marie's little sister Enya would do backing vocals. And one of the things you learned was never to go drinking with Marie and Enya, because they would drink you under the table. And so my memories of Enya are very different to most people.
Which festivals were they that you used to do?
Oh, there were lots. There was Sidmouth and Towersey, Bracknell, Bromyard, Cambridge. There were lots of folk festivals in England. Anyway, so that was kind of mentioning her name kind of brought back the various bits and pieces there.
Yeah.
Anyway, Habitat was an interesting product. I had an ex-employee, Romano Consolo, who ended up working for Habitat briefly in Germany.
Yep.
And so tell me a little bit more about Habitat.
Yeah. So, well, like I said, it started towards the end of my time at Plantronics. I was actually taking partners out to the head office in Santa Cruz, and we used to do that once every sort of 1 or 2 years. It was a bit of a fun trip, for a reward for the key partners. We used to take them out. We'd go to Santa Cruz. They'd speak to the directors and the executive teams about product, what's coming, etc. We do a bit of fun things, take them around San Fran, and then get them on a coach, take them across the border to Tijuana, where the factory was. We didn't let them go out roaming, but then we'd show them the factory and then bring them back across the border safe and sound. But it was during this one trip that I came across this Habitat soundscaping project, and it really stood out. Look, I'd seen sound masking before, but I knew that this was something different. I knew it just wasn't another AV product. It was entirely different. It was using biophilic sound, nature sounds, to not only help with privacy and tick that box, but it's also really trying to drive a wellness impact for the occupants. And I was really blown away. And I remember thinking, I've had enough, but I've been selling tin, or I've been selling hardware for the last 15 odd years. I want to do something different, and this is the future. I want to be part of this. And that's when I got sort of connected to Evan, and he was leading the product. And he had this really clear vision of, it's not just about the technology, but the deeper purpose behind it. And it wasn't about selling hardware. It was creating human-centered environments. And I remember speaking to him at length, and I think my sales instincts, my photocopier sales instincts kicked in, and I managed to convince him that Australia was right for this technology, and that I was the person that would be ideal to lead it over here. So I pestered him for a long while, and we stayed in regular contact. And then I came back here, and I started speaking with Evan more and more, and the business unit manager at the time. And I eventually ended up, like I said, I ended up heading up sales for it across this region. It's funny you mentioned Romana. Romana was doing Europe at the same time, and there's two salespeople in the US, and then they had the, like I said, a small incubation team, Evan and Jeff, who Jeff is with Moodsonic now. When Evan and Jeff were leading the product, and then a whole group of engineers as well. But in that very short time, in a very short time since I took it on, I paid back their faith, thankfully, in hiring me. So we landed some really major clients here in Australia. We had probably the best government department if you're trying to push innovation. Best government department here at least was a CSIRO, and they came on board very early on. We had some big pharma companies, a couple of financial institutions here in Sydney. Interestingly, there was one in Perth. I forgot to mention with Habitat, one of the things they sort of promoted with it is actually tying the sound to a visual, and that could be done in a number of ways. One of the things that they did do was have a sort of water feature that could sort of replicate the sound of a running stream or something, and that would be correlating to the sound that you could hear. But it was a water feature in the office, and that was something they promoted. I remember the first couple of months I was here, and I was trying to find companies that could provide these sealed water features that they had in the US, but because you're concerned about Legionnaire's disease and other things in the office space, but we couldn't find anyone. So this one company in this big financial organization in WA, they were very keen on that, and we ended up shipping it across on the boat. And I remember standing there with the AV installer. They put in all the gear and the speakers and all the normal things that they would be expecting, and then all of a sudden this truck turns up with this 10-foot water feature, and they're like, "Marcus, what's this?" We don't do that with Moodsonic now, but look, it was for us. For me, I got to know Evan very well through that period, and we built a good relationship about how things worked, and he gave me a lot of insight into where the product was heading, and I was throwing a lot of ideas at him. Most of them was sort of just brushing off. He said, "Yeah, Marcus, we've heard of that before," but then one of them stuck, and he made me aware of there was this internal patent program at Plantronics where you could pitch your ideas at the executive team, and if it had legs, they would run with it, and they would get it through their legal team, and if it was admitted, they pay you money. So I submitted my idea, it got approved, the patent was granted. I got my name on the wall along with Evan, because he sort of guided me through the process, and I got my money. But that's sort of where my sort of product manager life started and ended. It was very short-lived, because sort of just after that, Plantronics, they did an acquisition. They bought Polycom, and they did a lot of restructuring, and they made the choice then to really laser in on what their core business is, which is obviously voice and video endpoints. So they started closing down. They shelved Habitat, and they also closed down other things like their gaming division. So that was the sort of birth of Moodsonic.
And after that, did you stay on with the merged company, Poly?
I was there for a very short period, a bit longer than Evan. But yeah, we like I said, we were a pretty small team, and there was opportunity to go back in. There was many opportunities. They've been bringing in two big companies, two different cultures, so there was lots of opportunity to continue in it, but not doing Habitat. And we were all really gutted. We were all really disappointed about this. We saw huge momentum. Like I said, that was just a snapshot of what was happening over 12 months in my territory, but the Romano was getting same results in the UK, and Darcy and the other salespeople in the US. It was really building momentum, and I think Evan had seen the writing on the wall slightly before me, so he jumped ship, and we kept in contact. We kept on talking, and he made me aware that he was working behind the scenes, on continuing this product. So he said that it's going to be much cleaner and a more agile platform, still with this sort of biophilic rooted sounds and neuroscience and generative soundscapes. So I believed in what we had started, and I really believed in sort of where Evan said he was going to be taking it. So I took this big leap of faith, so to speak, and I started Valeo Technology, and that would have been, I should remember the date, it was 19th of February 2020. And I just stepped away from this stable, well-paid job to launch a company in an innovative soundscaping technology, so very different. And our primary target market at the time was commercial office. And then, Graham, COVID hit, which was obviously a big shock for everybody. But for me personally, it was a nightmare because the offices were empty. I had projects that I had a fair pipeline that I brought across and we were working on, but all projects were paused. Nobody was thinking about wellness in the office. Nobody was talking about soundscaping, that's for sure. And companies were just trying to stay afloat, and there was a global hire freeze, so it was very hard to pick up where you left off. And it was a scary time. It was for many people, but I remember really panicking and I was thinking, what have I done? I've got 4 kids. I've got bills to pay. The government here, I'm sure they were, wherever you were in many places around the world, they're wasting a lot of money. They were giving handouts, leftover rights to companies. Many companies didn't need them, and a lot of companies went bust as soon as they disappeared. But unfortunately for us, I was probably a bit jealous. I couldn't actually get any of these because we had to show a decline in business, and because we had just started, there was no there was no decline to show. So I had a few pilots, but nothing major. Nothing was really bringing in, a lot of money at the time. And then I remember I got a call from, it was from a global client that I'd been working with for many years for my Plantronics days. And he rang me up in a bit of a panic, and he was like, "Hey, Marcus, we've got all these workers. They've come home. They're working from home. We've taken on, global Zoom contracts, and we can't get headsets. Nobody's got headsets. Can you help us?" And it was like a light bulb moment for me. I thought, okay, there's an opportunity here. I can keep the lights on, so to speak. So I pivoted, and I started alongside doing the Mood Sonic and Valeo, which was, I was kicking the ball up the hill at the time with this. I started selling remote workplace tech. So that was headsets, hybrid kits, anything that clients needed. And it really helped at the time. I did that for about 6 months. And then I can remember, that kind of got saturated because there was lots of, I think once companies got the equipment they needed from home, there was nothing more to sort of sell them. And so after about sort of 6 months, I started doing Uber because I still needed to bring in a supplement to help us stay alive. And my sweet spot was getting up at about 3:30 in the morning, and I would do the early morning Uber runs to the airport. The people had just started flying then, and not many other people were doing it. So I used to get quite a few runs back and forth, and then I'd be back home by 8:30 to get the kids to school, and then I'd start on my day job. So it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a glamorous lifestyle, but it kept us alive. And once the world started reopening, that sort of resilience, I think it really shaped us going forward. The when it did open, the conversations changed. Absolutely. I think people were, they weren't just going, it wasn't just about getting people back in the office. It was about how can we completely rethink the role of the office entirely.
Interesting. So at that same time, we founded Bluesound Professional about a year earlier than you did, but we just started shipping products, and like you, in our case, we were dealing primarily with the hospitality and retail environment. And again, those were shuttered, restaurants and bars and shops and things. So we had it hard. Although in our case, we were partnered with the Lenbrook Group that does hi-fi, which was going through the roof at that time because people were spending money on their houses. So
absolutely.
I don't know what it's like in Australia, but for example, you couldn't get wood over here because people were doing home improvements kind of all the time. And it was interesting what you were saying about selling headsets and remote working, because we started to do the very original Surroundscapes at that time, the first episode, and I needed some equipment like the mic that's up here and USB mic, and other bits and pieces, lighting and stuff. And it was so difficult to get at that time. Everyone was buying remote working equipment, and I remember thinking at that time, if I were starting a business now, what I would do is make a monitor that had a really good camera in it, had a set of really good speakers, maybe some lights built in, and connected via one cable, a USB-C cable, to laptops. People were being sent home with their laptops, and then they'd go out and buy sundry equipment, and the corporate IT team were having to try and help them set it up remotely. And I felt that a great opportunity would be to have this one device that IT teams could buy in tens of thousands, send it out, plug and play. Anyway, so yeah, we had a shared kind of rocky start in terms of building the business. It grew because it started from zero, so it had nowhere to go except up, because we were at zero. But it also reminds me, because he was on the first episode of Surroundscapes, how I got involved in what became Mood Sonic was through Julian Treasure, who I met at TED in, I think, 2010, TED Global. And we began talking, and he was the first person I met that was involved in selling sound to business, not sound systems or even content, but the idea that you could use more than one of your senses in business. So businesses really focus around our sense of sight, and how businesses of all sorts could improve their effectiveness, their productivity, by melding different senses together. And then, as you know, Evan linked up with Julian. Mood Sonic was born. We got involved talking about Mood Sonic at that time. Then Evan, those two parted, so Evan could grow the company more aggressively than maybe Julian wanted. And then Evan and I continued to talk over the years, and now we've got a much closer relationship. But tell me, it was slow at the start. What happened as we came out of the pandemic?
Well, it was, I mean, it was, like I say, it was keeping the lights on, so to speak. And then I think just when things started to open up, we started to get more meaningful. I think there was this realization, okay, we need to get people back to the office. How are we going to do it? A lot of companies were downsizing. They were, realizing that people may only be coming in sort of 3 days of the week. So they didn't need so much real estate. So that was, that was a cost saving for them. And they had more money to sort of make the workplaces a bit more attractive. So we started speaking with property teams, architects, designers, consultants, and not just as a product supplier. Then it was really as a design collaborator. Well-being became a hot topic, flexibility, sensory experience, all the things you just mentioned, and they became central to workplace strategy. And soundscaping really started to land in a more meaningful way with these titles. And then I think through all this, and even through COVID, I mentioned that we had, one or two pilots, and one of those that had been bubbling away in the background happened to be for a 20+ floor HQ for a multinational company, energy company in Western Australia. And I'd first spoken to the consultant in Habitat Days at a Telstra event, actually. And during COVID, they took the decision. They said, right, okay, this is really interesting. We'd like to pilot this. So they went through months and months of pilot. We did some very bespoke things for them. We created a theme which was based on an island in WA called Rottnest Island, and they absolutely loved it. And we did other bespoke things for them. And then just as the world was reopening, they made that decision to go full scale. and they rolled it out across the whole building, and that was the massive turning point for us. So, after all this hard turmoil, it really gave us momentum and in this region, and I think it really proved to a lot of people, because I think a lot of people were looking at this up, okay, how's this going to end up? And it really proved that large scale soundscaping wasn't just viable, it was desirable. They absolutely loved it. And I think you've said before on this podcast, I've watched quite a few, that when you're building something from sort of ground up, and when you're in that startup mode, the wins hit deeper and the losses hit harder. And this one, this one, Graham, it was really sweet, because everything we'd been through, it was like, okay, now we have breathing space. And it was fantastic. And I think since then, we've gone on, and the focus has changed just from being commercial offices. We've expanded into new sectors. We're seeing lots of development now in government. We're starting to work in healthcare, in education, and we've delivered quite a few very unique projects here. I think in Australia, some of the standout ones. The first would be it was for an office headquarters for a religious education provider here in Sydney, and they had, what was key there, they had a very forward-thinking architect and interior designer on board, and that was key, because that made the job a lot easier for us. And we worked closely with them. We sort of delivered tailored soundscapes throughout the workspace, each zone aligned to what they were trying to achieve from a design perspective. So they had areas that were for focus work, quiet areas, and these all visually looked different, and then they sounded different as well. And their foyer was particularly vibrant. They had a really visually striking space, and it told a lot about the organization. It was probably the biggest LED wall I had seen at the time in an office space. You'd walk in and it was, it covered the whole area. I know the consultant actually got it shipped in from the US direct from the manufacturer. I'm not sure who did it, but it was amazing, and they had lots of art pieces as well. But then we matched that then with a soundscape that was sort of both vibrant and uplifting, and we also put in a scent as well, actually a couple of different scents, and we rotated them. We worked with that design team, say, okay, these are the different scents. They did a bit of a scent design exercise, and they went through the catalog, what was available, and they sort of settled on things like cedarwood. They had lots of wood in design, and they had cedarwood, they had frankincense sort of tied into the religious side of it. They used a lot of fresh ones like lemongrass, and it really sort of brought a lift to that space. They didn't use it in the office. I think with scenting, you've got to be a little bit careful. It's one of our more powerful scents, and I think it's good in those communal areas where people are coming in and out. But if you start putting it into enclosed areas, it can be a bit too much for people. So I think you've got to be very careful with doing that. But with this one as well, just off the foyer, they had a chapel area, and that would seat about 15 to 20 people, and worked with Mood Sonic, and they created a bespoke Gregorian chant theme for this chapel area that tied into the liturgical calendar. And it absolutely lifts this place. So next time you're in Sydney, I'd love to take you through. You go in, and we've done this with many clients. It looks amazing, but when you turn the sound on, it gives it another sort of element. It's really cool.
Wow. Yeah, I know from Evan that Australia has been at the forefront of Mood Sonic growth, and I've actually often found that back in my Biamp days, Australia consistently outperformed other countries. It does for Bluesound Professional as well. So
that was my pitch to him when I was telling him how great it would be for Habitat. He didn't believe me at first.
Yeah, well, when I was at Biamp, I keep going to Australia to get it set up, and my then boss at Biamp said, "You're only going because you love going to Australia," which is true. I do love going to Australia. But there was method in my madness, and we later saw some fabulous business in Australia, and we do to this day. So this is a case study episode, and what we really wanted to talk about, our listeners have been very, hopefully very forgiving of us just chatting away, but the centerpiece of this is this Experience Centre for CBRE that you've just commissioned in Singapore. So tell us all about that.
Yeah, so this has been a real milestone for us, and I think many people, not just in terms of its outcome, but I think it's really sort of demonstrated what is possible. And to give you a bit of background, so I've been looking after Mood Sonic here in Australia and New Zealand since 2020, and then Evan reached out to me late last year, and he sort of said, "Look, Marcus, there's an opportunity to expand into Singapore. Would you be interested?" And I didn't really have to think too long about it. I already knew sort of that country, it was sort of very heavy on design for biophilic design driven by the government, and I saw a huge opportunity there. So we made that decision and we incorporated into Singapore February this year. And I quickly got awareness of this project that was happening with CBRE, but it was due for completion in May, June. So we came in very late and we had to move very quickly. And we were brought in by a person named Simon Long, and he's CBRE's Senior Director for Client Technology. And he had this very bold vision. He wasn't just sort of wanting to create high performing workplaces, which he does day in, day out for his clients. What he really wanted to showcase is what's possible when technology, design, human experience are all fully aligned. So from day one, Simon really understood the importance of audio. I think I put on one of my LinkedIn posts. It's a bit like plugging into the matrix when you talk to him. Any topic he he just can talk about anything in real depth. And you come away feeling a lot more intelligent. But he really understood audio. He knew how to sort of the importance of getting the zoning right, the density, everything I was telling him. He's like, yep. And I thought, great, this is great. And what stood out though for me was his long-term thinking. He wasn't just designing for day one. He was saying to me, "Look, Marcus, this is day one. This is how it's going to be. But we might change the office. We might in 6 months' time, we might want to move that department here, or we might want to have a bigger zone here, etc." And how this might evolve very quickly over time. He mentioned that he'd love to run network audio, but he didn't think it was possible. He said it's the timelines, the budget constraints. And I think with many, he thought, it was going to be a sort of 5x project to go down with network audio. And that's where me and you started talking. And we spoke at length about what was possible, what was available in the Bluesound stables, and we ended up designing this amazing system, which covers the majority of the office with the Bluesound BCS 300 PoE speakers. And that's covering 14 zones across the office. And that's including all the front of house, back of house areas. So we got the focus areas, the wellness rooms, they've got collaborative spaces, they've got quiet areas, they've got it in the bathrooms. And the result has been absolutely fantastic, Graham. Not only the sound has been amazing. I think Simon said, look, they sound absolutely amazing when we first turned them on. They were crystal clear, but they've given them exactly what they wanted. They wanted flexibility, they wanted scalability, and they wanted to future proof. And every single box of that has been ticked. And I think for them now going forward, if they want to reconfigure, what they would have thinking they would have to do is go into the ceiling, pull out cables. They don't have to do that. It's going into your software. It's decoupling speakers from groups, regrouping them. And I couldn't believe, I hadn't used your software before. I couldn't believe how easy it was to do that and how quick it was to sort of change settings. And some of the other things I think Simon has really liked about it has been, you can go into an individual speaker. If there's a particular person who wants it louder or quieter in a specific space, you can go up above that speaker and you can make that adjustment. In many of the other deployments we've done, if that was the case, it either meant unplugging that speaker or tapping it down or tapping it up. And it was quite a, mechanical, and you didn't get the granularity of what you can do now with this. And I think also then that flexibility of, Mood Sonic is default. And then on a Friday afternoon, if they want to come in and they want to start playing music in certain areas, it's just a matter of going into your software again, and then through the BlueOS software, just going across to whatever streaming service they want to use and start playing music, and then they can go back to the Mood Sonic once they finish. So there were so many advantages, and I think despite this tight deadline, the budget. We all came together. I know I put a lot of pressure on you and John from the Singapore team, and thank you so much for coming to the party. But we worked with their local installation team, ESCO. There was the consultants there involved, Hugh Shot, and then Simon and all his team. And we've delivered this amazing multi-zone mood sonic soundscaping experience powered by the Bluesound speakers. So it's been truly wonderful. And I think what Simon's done on a broader scale across that workplace is really impressive. If next time in Singapore, I know he would love to host you and take you through. You go in and you come out of the lift, and you hear soundscaping straight away. You turn right, you go to the bathrooms, you'll hear soundscaping. You go left, you come through this amazing video wall, and it's pretty much below you, above you, behind you, and it's playing everywhere. And then you're in the sort of front of house, and it all opens up. Then it can be used for town halls. But what I've really liked what they've done is they've got this deep integration with all the data sets. So they're looking at air quality, they're looking at occupancy, they're looking at light levels, and then they're looking at the mood sonic acoustic data. So we use that data ourselves to sort of make the changes with the mood sonic themes in every zone. But they're using that, then they're saying, okay, how can we use this to get a real-time understanding of what's happening in the office space at any given time? So if from their occupancy information they find that on the west wing people aren't sitting there, is it because it's too light? Is the sun come up on that side and it's shining through and they've gone over to the other side of the office? Is it because it's too loud? And they've got a lot of different types of focus rooms. They've got focus rooms there where people go in, single person focus room, get their work done. Then they've got bigger meeting rooms. Again, they're using these sensors in there. So, if in the focus room, they can see it's occupied through the occupancy sensor, but then it's been very loud in there. Is it being used for focus? If it isn't, do they need more meeting rooms? And it's this type of data that's really valuable for CBRE, for them going forward now, to be able to, not only for their own buildings, but to be able to show this to their clients going forward. And I think the end result of it, Graham, has been, it's award winning. The project has recently won, as you know, the best corporate office at the Innovate APAC Awards. And I think it's sort of a real world blueprint of how scalable smart audio and smart soundscaping can be to elevate sort of these type of buildings.
Interesting. You've touched on a number of things that are interesting to me and I think valuable to point out. So, the more traditional way that the MoodSonic have done systems is kind of a centralized system where there's multiple players feeding into a DSP component and out through to amplifiers and speakers.
Yep.
And that's great if you have that DSP for other things and that sort of thing. But as you mentioned, the downside of that is reconfiguring is more difficult.
Yep.
And with our work with MoodSonic, we're planning to really bring to market a host of different architectures, from centralized, like is now done, to what you did, which is actually completely decentralized, where every single speaker is intelligent and zones can be, as you said, reconfigured almost on the fly if necessary, and solutions in between those. I'm also, one thing you didn't mention, but is important to a lot of our customers, and I think will be to a lot of your customers, is also being able to monitor to the endpoint. So is the system working? Are all of the components working? If you monitor a player, you know that the player's working. You have no idea whether the amps are turned on or the speakers are blown. And and so, particularly for these more flexible environments, and you casually mentioned something that I think is worth talking about more, which is this idea of activity-based work, and the idea that within this workspace and within an increasing number of workspaces now, you don't just come into work and sit at your desk all day and then maybe go to some meetings and then go home, but you choose what area of the workspace you want to work in based on what you want to get done. Can you talk a little bit more about how they're using activity-based work there in Singapore?
Yeah, so they've kind of designed different areas. They've sort of said that they've got um, I guess collaborative areas, focus areas, um, places, and they've got everything from focus rooms, wellness rooms. In the front of house, they've got the cafe areas, and just I guess places where they want people to sort of go and communicate throughout the day. But it's really down to the employee coming in at that time of day. They've got these big wall boards where they're showcasing lots of different data sets, but from a mood sonic point of view, they're showcasing our acoustic data, and it's a bit like a heat map, an occupancy style looking floor plan, but then with a heat map of how loud or quiet different spaces are. So you might come in and say, I want to get some deep focus work done today. All the focus rooms are taken. Okay, where's the quiet area? Where's been the quietest area over the last half an hour? Because we can show that on this floor plan, and they can seek that space. So there's lots of different options for them, and they've really tried to sort of, I guess, design towards neurodiversity as well, and making areas where they're saying, this area is going to be quieter than the top right zone. And here you can make a phone call. But here, if you're going to come here and you want to do some deep work, we don't want you making any phone calls. So they're really trying to define different spaces. So can people, when they want to do that type of work, they can go and get it done.
Interesting. Yeah, we're actually the week after next. I'm going with Jeff to San Francisco to commission another kind of experience center very like it. In that case, for a furniture company, and again with endpoint solutions. And just this morning, I was in a local kind of beauty salon's the best way of describing it, in Portland, where they're putting in a much smaller system. And to be able to tell them, well, you can have different music in every treatment room, their minds will blown. You mean we don't have to have the same thing across the whole thing? No, you don't. They're intelligent endpoints. You can do what you like. There's actually in Australia, there's a chain of beauty salons that use our gear, and they're doing the same thing. But talk more about CBRE, and because I think we've been just using the name. CBRE is an initial stands for Coldwell Banker Richard Ellis. Tell us a little bit more about what they do, what their experience centers do, and how you see that moving forward.
Yeah, well, I think from our point of view with what Simon's done, I mean, his role in the company is to show clients what technology can do. That's the whole point of it. And I think he's constantly been on this path of talking about the possibilities. And for him, this was, just a breath of fresh air to be able to say, okay, I've spoken about this before. Here it is, and we've done it, kind of thing. And he's got real world numbers of what it can potentially be done for, which is great. And I think in the last, this went live in June. He took a month off, and I think in the last sort of couple of months now since then, he's just been inundated. Him and his team, they're consultants speaking to clients about workplace technology, back-to-back meetings, walking clients through big global companies. This is what we do. They've got some fascinating technology there, obviously Moodsonic, Bluesound, but other things there where for instance an application that will scan all the plants in the office. It locates all the plants, scans all the plants, gives data around what those plants can do for the office space, what the well-being impact can be for them. So they do some really out there technology that's sort of really pushing boundaries of where this is heading. And I think I've seen on some of your previous podcasts speaking about experience design and experimental design, multi-sensory design. and it's always been a bit of a buzzword, and I think it's been very prevalent in, theme parks, and you go into high-end experience centers. But we're starting to see that, especially with what I've seen in CBRE now, starting to see that coming into this office. It's becoming more commercialized. It's becoming more viable for these office spaces, and it's not for every company. It's not going to be for every space, but I certainly think it can be, really attractive when we're trying to get people coming back to the office. Having these sort of fun elements in the front of house, in the areas where you want people to congregate. It really brings a big bit of fun, and it can be part of the reason why people think, actually, I don't mind going to the office. I wouldn't mind going to the office today. It's quite good there. You go and meet so and so. You can have a coffee. You can have a bit of fun, and I think that's kind of the thing that Simon's really been pushy for. He mentioned to me, probably won't mind me mention. He mentioned on a presentation before about the way he sees some of this is about the Disneyfication of the office space. So making it like going to a theme park, making it a bit fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really exciting to be involved, and we're very proud to be involved with yourselves. And yeah, I think there's going to be great things, and hopefully a lot of continued business through CBRE with them and their clients.
Yeah. I have a German consultant friend, I think I've said this on the podcast series before, called Bernd Schindler, who describes the workplace as the new hospitality. Because employers are actively trying to bring back workers, at least for part of the week, into the office, because whereas remote work is great for productivity, it's not great for creativity. And so so once you've got everything done, how do you innovate for the future? And that's typically done with groups of people sparking off each other. And so it's important to bring people back into the workspace. And bringing, as you say, making that workspace something that you can't easily get at home is important there. I've worked in the past with many technology companies, and the most mindful ones of those know that their workers' productivity is their most important asset, and anything they can do to improve productivity, whether that be free meals so that workers don't have to go to restaurants at lunchtime and lose an hour of their time, free laundry services, pet care, anything to help their employees become more productive, as well as being a perk for the employee, is actually profitable for the employer because they get more out of their workers. For context here, CBRE is the world's largest real estate company. They have a revenue of a little bit over $35 billion a year, about 140,000 employees in 100 countries. So they're a significant client for you to have.
Absolutely.
How much, when they're renting out office space, or commercial real estate, I should say, it's not just office space, but often it is office space, how much of the technology do they put in? Do they just rent out a shell and tell their customers to get on with it, or are they being more proactive now in building out workspaces?
I think they're, certainly from Simon's perspective, I think they're getting more proactive in recommending technology. They've obviously got a whole group of partners that they work very closely with. But certainly from a recommendation point of view, they're showcasing and recommending what would be ideal for clients that they're speaking to. They're using that as a differentiator to sort of showcase what could be done, for sure.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot that AV systems, or certainly intelligent AV systems, are becoming more part of the building fabric because they interface more with all elements of a smart building. And so a trend we're seeing is that developers are playing a larger role now in fitting out more of the building. So, in the past, it'd just give you a shell. Now
Yes.
they give
Yeah.
you a shell with central facilities, building management systems, smart building technologies. AV systems come into that. And that
Yep.
has two benefits. One is it can make the developer more money because people pay more
Yes.
for that type of workspace than a shell. But for companies, it allows them to get up and running quicker because more of the build is done when they move in.
I was going to say it's a very competitive landscape. We are having those conversations as well, where the developers are wanting to try and differentiate, and whether it's simply as in the communal spaces in the foyers, and we'd love them to put soundscaping everywhere, for instance. But I certainly think having sort of these technologies going through the communal spaces can be a huge differentiator for them compared to some of the what else has been offered. And we're seeing things here in Australia where they're really trying to advance end of trip facilities. So I think that the standard go-to there has been bike racks, showers, and now we're starting to see things. We're doing some projects where they're going to have wellness rooms in there, so people come in, they biked in or they run in, they can have their shower, they go for a massage, they can listen to some relaxing soundscape, and they're ready for their work. So I think we will start seeing those type of things come in. I'd love to go full bleed and have it everywhere, but I think that'll take a bit of time.
Yeah, I really resonate with that. Every morning I walk up to the top of I live on the side of a hill,
Yeah.
and I walk up to the top every morning.
Okay,
And
nice.
in my case, I listen to podcasts, but I also listen to the nature up there and look at it
Yeah.
all. And it just puts me in a better frame of mind. When I get back, it's an hour during which I've had some exercise. I've probably learned some stuff from a podcast. I've seen our neighborhood, and I'm fortunate that I can literally walk out of our house and do that without having to drive somewhere. And it really puts me in the right headspace to be productive for the rest of the day. So I can totally get why people are doing that.
Yeah.
So where do you think things are going to go from here, both for Valeo and for Mood Sonic, and maybe for CBRE?
Yeah, well, look, I think we're in a really exciting era. I think this workplace design is like finally shifting from being something purely functional to something that's much more human. And I think for a long time it's been all about efficiency. I think it's about how many desks per square meter, what the cost per head is, and now the conversation for us has definitely changed. It's all about how a space feels. Making, as we've spoken about, making it more attractive to try and get people to come in, designing for neurodiversity. And sound, as you sort of say, sound's going to have a massive impact on that. I see the future of soundscaping as very bright. I was going to say very orange then, as the old UK telco, but I think I'm really excited where soundscaping is heading. Adaptive, responsive soundscaping. We're doing that today. We've been doing that from day one. Generative soundscaping. We've been doing it from day one. What's coming? It's so exciting, to see what some of the things that Evan's spoken about. And I would just like to say, if you want to find out more about the Mood Sonic soundscaping, please go and watch the Mood Sonic podcast that Graham's just done with Evan. But look, I think it's going to be a fast track in the next couple of months over the year, and people see a huge change in direction, and it's going to be a really exciting time. And I think I pointed at this from the multi-sensory design point. I've already sort of pointed out, I think this is going to become more commercialized, it become more viable in workplaces as we've seen with CBRE already. But I think it's going to be in the right place. You're not going to have all this multi-sensory happening in the open work area where you want people to focus. That would be distracting. But I think there's definitely spaces where it can really work well and can help bring people back to the office. And at Valeo, I guess our goal is to help clients and our partners sort of lead that transition. We want to be delivering spaces. There's lots of companies out there speaking about this, but we've got a proven track record of delivering Mood Sonic and other things now, and we want it, so it's function, it's not just about supporting well-being, but creativity and emotional presence. That's what our future is holding, I believe.
That's a great way to finish: creativity and emotional presence.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably leave it there because that's a great ending statement. But is there anything else you'd like to say? Any areas we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about?
No. I think this has been really good. Thanks, Graham. It's been great chatting to you. I know we've only had a few conversations, and me hassling you to get product in quickly. The CBRE, and you've been amazing. But look, look, I'm really excited what the future holds. As I say, I've been very passionate about this from day one, and it's been quite personal. I actually, just to finish off, I remember I was on a leadership course a couple of years ago, and it was funny actually. They asked me to think of this childhood memory where you felt your happiest, and it was one of those sort of Simon Sinek why, find your why moment. And what came back to me at the time, it was this vivid memory of me being sort of 7, 8 years old in the green grass of home in Wales. I probably had my soccer boots on, and I remember sort of having that feeling of looking through a child's lens, no worries. So I could imagine the sun was shining, the dew was glistening on the grass, and I just had this feeling of unbelievable happiness and being unbreakable, as you often do when you're very young. And I think we quickly lose that as we get older. We, especially as we get through our teens and our 20s, work happens and stress happens and it all dissipates. And I think that's what we're trying to really create, sort of bringing that sort of feeling back into the built environment and the connection to nature. That's really, something that I'm really passionate about, and we're really passionate about, both at Valeo and Mood Sonic. It's that feeling of happiness and unbreakable.
Excellent. Yeah. I can quite agree with you. And having a 23-year-old daughter myself, seeing her go through that process kind of reminded me of myself going through that process. And that is a lovely thought to help people to get back to that sense of true, unbridled happiness and a sense of optimism, and everything is possible. Yeah. So how can people find out more about what you do at Valeo? How can people get in touch with you?
So go to our website. It's www.valeotechnology, all one word, and it's just .com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'd love to have a chat. We're based here in Australia. We represent Mood Sonic here, Australia, New Zealand, now Singapore and Hong Kong as well. So but anywhere from around the world. I'm going to be going back to the UK soon to see my folks. They won't watch this. I'm going to try and surprise them. So, but yeah, look, please reach out. I'd love to have a chat about any of what we've discussed here today. So,
great. Thanks very much for being on the program. It's been really fun having you on and listening to Mood Sonic. We're so excited about what possibilities are there for both of our companies together. I was actually explaining to someone early this morning about this, but I'm really excited to see where this is going to go. So thank you, listeners and watchers, for coming to see Surroundscapes. Hopefully once again. You can find Surroundscapes on YouTube, on your favorite podcast app, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. A really good place to find it is on our site, so surroundscapes.bluesoundprofessional.com. We produce new episodes every Tuesday, so please come back for more. If you like this, please subscribe on YouTube so that you can be notified when we're doing new things. And I hope to see you again soon. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you. Thanks, Graham.